Hello and welcome to Law Matters. My guest today is Laurie Murphy. She's a partner with Valensi Rose in Century City. And we're going to be talking about real estate today, everybody's favorite subject here, especially in California. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jim. How are you?
All right. The real estate market has really changed over the years. From, let's say, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, to now, you have to be so much more careful. Do you recommend on every occasion to hire an attorney to go through the process of selling a house or buying a house?
Well, not necessarily, but you touched on a good point. Over the past 10 and even more so 20 years, prices have gone, as we know, through the roof in California. Yes, they've dropped back slightly the last several months, but when people are spending $1 million and up on a home, sometimes it's a good idea to have somebody else help them through the process, in addition to their agent.
Now, does it depend what kind of a home it is, whether it's a tract house or it's a custom-built house, to get that extra help?
Sure. I would say more problems crop up when you're dealing with a custom house, something that isn't in a planned unit development where the lots are the same size, the houses are similar, the same builder built them.
Now, do I need an agent if I want to sell my house? I mean, is it required according to the state of California? It
is not required by law, however, and people do sell their houses. You see them from time to time for sale by owner. But an agent, I would say, is pretty close to a necessity if you're selling a house, just to get the best price, get the most exposure. In addition, you really need somebody to make sure you sign all the right paperwork.
Right.
And unless you have a friend who's an agent, you're not going to be able to get all that information by yourself.
Now, do I sign a contract with these people? Is that how it works? Or and how long does that contract last usually? And if I'm not satisfied with an agent, can I change quickly? How does that all work?
Well, if you're the seller, you are required, and you're going to have an agent, that agreement must be in writing in order for the agent to get paid. So they are in writing.
Oh, they do get paid?
They do get paid when the sale closes. The terms of such an agreement are negotiable. Most of the big brokerages, I think we all know who they are, have standard forms, but you should, a seller, should be aware that everything in that form pretty much is negotiable. The listing term, the commission, what the agent has to do after the listing term expires to make sure that he's protected, so that he gets a commission if someone comes back and sells the property later. But now, all of that's negotiable.
Okay. Now, if let's say I'm selling my house, what do I need to do? What pre-preparation do I need to do before I start not thinking about selling a house, but before I sell the home? What do I need to do?
Well, you really don't have to do anything other than my recommendation to hire an agent. But if you want your house to get top dollar, you're going to want to get it in the best possible condition. In addition, and I think we're going to touch upon this later, as a seller, you do have to disclose a lot to a buyer, so it would probably be a good idea to gather all the documents you have concerning repairs you might have done to the house, any insurance claims you put in for problems, if you built the house or remodeled it, any of those contracts, who did them, prices, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, well, how detailed do some of these things have to be to protect myself as a seller, so that nothing comes back to bite me?
Well, my recommendation is always to disclose more than you think you need to disclose rather than less. And I always recommend, too, if you're buying a house, because disclosures, you only have to tell a buyer certain things. You don't necessarily, unless the buyer has asked for it, or unless it's in the contract, you don't necessarily have to provide all the backup documentation. Regardless, whether you do or whether you're required to or not, I think it's a good idea to put all that stuff together and maybe make yourself a little binder. And if the buyer asks for it, or perhaps even if he doesn't, just turn it over to the buyer.
Is there a problem if I have a home that I bought from someone else, and there may be some issues that I don't know about, and maybe I had the house for about a year and I sold it to someone else, and there's an issue that comes up, but it has nothing to do with me, but with the previous owner of the house. Legally, am I in sort of jeopardy in any way at all, or not?
Assuming you didn't build a house or you didn't do a major remodel on the house, the only thing you have to do is disclose what you know about it. So if it's something that you did not know about, then you should not be responsible for it.
Okay. And as a seller, how do I protect myself down the line? There may be some things that I may not even know about, and yet something happens and the buyer finds out. How do I protect myself even from things that I don't know about? Is there a way to do that?
Well, again, if all you're doing is selling the house, and if you didn't build it or do a major remodel or a big renovation on it, all you have to do is disclose what you know. And if it's something, if you're later called to task for something you didn't know about, you can't be held responsible, assuming you did not build, remodel, or renovate the house. If you're in a situation where you may have built the house yourself or hired a contractor to build it, done a major renovation or a remodel or an addition, in that circumstance you're more than just the seller of the house. You've also improved it. You're an improver of real property, and different laws apply. And basically the law in that instance is, as a builder, renovator, etc., you have an obligation to do so in a non-negligent manner. Negligence is a different standard from disclosure. Disclosure, which you're required to do as a seller, all you have to do is disclose what you know. But you might not, as a builder or a renovator or remodeler, you may not know that something's wrong with your house, but you can still be responsible if your contract does not relieve you of that obligation.
Now, as a buyer, what do I need to specifically look out for when I'm buying a home?
My recommendation to buyers is that, in addition to the disclosures, which they'll get anyway, in the contract itself, to have a provision in there where the seller not only has to provide the disclosures, but where the seller actually provides you the backup documents. So if you had a seller, for instance, that built, remodeled, renovated a home, you want the underlying contracts, you want to know who did the work, perhaps how much the work cost, was there an architect involved, were there permits issued, inspections, etc., so that you have in front of you not just the fact that the seller might have done a remodel, but you've got the underlying documents that governed that remodel.
Now, getting back to someone who's remodeled, so if I hire a contractor to do a certain phase of the remodel, I do need to have something signed off by him.
Well, most people, if you hire a contractor, have a contract with the contractor. There are certain types of remodels that will require building department approval. The contractor typically is responsible for getting that done.
Okay, so I, as a seller now, I have to make sure that, again, the documentation has to be there, that with the proper signatures and everything else. Now,
well, I recommend that. It may be that you don't have it anymore, but if you do, you should provide it to the buyer.